Clarke schreef de Sentinel in 1948 voor een wedstrijd van de BBC. Een verhaal over een in het maanstof begraven buitenaards voorwerp. Het werd geweigerd. Maar 2 decennia later bewerkte hij het samen met regisseur Stanley Kubrick tot 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Here in this London suburb, space scientists, industrial designers, and conceptual artists from all over the world are gathering at the MGM studios.
Clarke begon in 1964 aan de film. Hij schreef het scenario en de roman tegelijkertijd en gaf ook nog wetenschappelijke adviezen.
They have been brought together to contribute their knowledge, their ideas, their visions, to advise and consult in the filming of Stanley Kubrick's 2001, A Space Odyssey.
I remember how Stanley did contact me when I was working actually in Time Life, working on a book called Man and Space. And, you know, Stanley said, I want to make the proverbial good science fiction movie, implying that there hadn't been any up to that date.
Well, visually it's breathtaking. It's hard to go back and recreate that moment when it first appeared, when it was so stunning and looked like nothing else that had been made.
It's very difficult to explain the effect it had on me. I felt like I had been just, in a way, ripped out of the cradle, like I'd been transported into a universe where miraculous things were possible.
Well, there was never a movie like it before, and there hasn't been a movie since. But it did influence the look of space in all movies and television shows since then. Just as there has never been a mafia movie since The Godfather that doesn't refer in some way or another to The Godfather, there has never been another science fiction movie or television show that isn't in debt to some degree to 2001. So it set the agenda for the look of space.
In a way, 2001 is timeless. It's sort of in a time warp of its own. It still stands up remarkably well. I was pleased to see that recently in the poll of film critics, they put it as one of the 10 greatest films of all time, and which, of course, is very, very flattering, very heartwarming. It's hardly dated at all, except, of course, for the actual date itself.
It is the best science fiction film ever made, but it's also one of the best films ever made. So to put it into a genre is unfair. It's really a film about ideas. It's not a commercial film in any way. That's why it's amazing that it's made millions and millions of dollars.
This is the screenplay of the movie 2001, A Space Odyssey, which Stanley Kubrick and I have been working on for the last 2 years. It's a space odyssey because we want to show the opening days of the exploration of the solar system, not just the moon, which will be old hat by the year 2001. In fact, the story really begins on the moon and takes off from there. We want to go right out to the giant planets beyond Mars.
Vanwege de letterlijk kosmische dimensies van de film wilden Clarke en Kubrick uitgaan van een wetenschappelijke realiteit. Er werd enorm veel aandacht besteed aan het nauwkeurig uitbeelden van het heelal achter het dunne beschermlaagje van de aardse atmosfeer.
Before 2001, every other science fiction film was a great B-movie. And there were entertainment movies. Whereas 2001 was based on scientific knowledge or projection into the future, to the year 2001. And so it was termed as a science fact film, not a science fiction film.
Most science fiction films trample on the science terribly. They don't care about the science, whereas Kubrick and Clarke did, and I think it added to their art a great deal, and they consulted scientists and NASA and so forth to try to get things right.
Two of these men, space scientists Fred Ordway and Harry Lange, formerly of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, and both active in space vehicle construction, are Stanley Kubrick's principal astronautic advisors.
My experience at NASA was 100% instrumental in working on the film 2001. Stanley said to me, he said, well, I can get better illustrators than you are, a dime a dozen in New York City, they're all out of work, but I don't have your background and the ability to design interplanetary space vehicles based on some of the knowledge that I had.
This is the helmet I've designed that will be worn in the film by the 6 astronauts that will go onto the moon base.
I had to be a little bit careful because during my time at NASA, everything was considered top secret and was locked away. We were still in the throes of the Cold War with the Soviet Union. So I had to be a little bit watchful that I didn't bring anything into the science which was critical.
The details are what matter, even if you're not aware of them at the time. We worked together and brainstormed and developed ideas and threw away, most of them, and another thing eventually evolved over a period of almost 4 years.
That Keir and I lived in the picture was an astounding piece of work. They'd sort of harnessed me up in 2001 and turn the wheel on, and I'd hang up there upside down trying to be cool, So imagine hanging upside down. And the first time they took me up there, I took a fork and bit into my food, and the food went shh.
Hello, Hal, do you read me? Do you read me, Hal? Affirmative, Dave.
Maar Hal, de eigenzinnige boordcomputer, was de echte ster van 2001.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
I suppose there are lots of scholarly articles on intelligent computers or computers that could interact directly with people, but in creating Hal as a fictional entity, he took all of this specialized knowledge and gave us a very visceral notion of what it means if computers become as intelligent as humans.
This mission is too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it. I don't know what you're talking about, Hal. I know that you and Frank were planning to disconnect me, and I'm afraid that's something I cannot allow to happen.
So to think forward far enough to imagine a computer that can do natural language and reasoning, even scheming, a computer that is capable of dealing with ethical dilemmas, that's very out there for 1968, and yet many of the areas of artificial intelligence are moving in exactly those directions.
I don't think anybody doubts that artificial intelligence of all sorts of levels, including much higher levels than ours, will be achieved. But artificial consciousness, that's the interesting question. And I've suggested the first time that a computer cracks a really original joke, we know that consciousness has arrived.
Naast kunstmatige intelligentie bepaalden ook andere elementen de filosofische inslag van 2001.
On the human side, we are concerned with nothing less than man's place in the universe and his possible position in the pecking order of cosmic intelligence.
Niet bepaald dingen die de kassa doen rinkelen, maar toch was MGM bereid om miljoenen dollars te spenderen aan de creatieve ambities van Clarke en Kubrick.
It's the kind of film that could never be made if it had to be approved by a production executive. It has a screenplay that would be inexplicable to anyone. You could not pitch this film.
2001 verbijsterde het publiek.
It did contain all sorts of subtleties, and a lot of people were baffled at the first viewing. In fact, the initial reaction to the film was very strange. It was disastrous in many ways.
I remember the opening night, I had a seat in the balcony for that premiere, and after the intermission, my date and I were able to find good seats on the first floor because so many people had walked out, including Rock Hudson, who stalked down the aisle saying, "Will somebody tell me what the hell this is about?"
We premiered in Washington, we premiered in New York City, we were raked by the critics, no one liked us.
One MGM executive after the first screening said, well, that's the end of Stanley Kubrick.
And within 8 or 10 days, the audiences were all over the streets.
Welcome to Cyberfest, and welcome to people watching and listening all over the world on the World Wide Web, including Mr. Arthur C. Clarke in Sri Lanka, who will be joining us later by the miracle not only of the internet, but also of the communication satellites that he was the first to propose.
Clarke's ongewone, maar zeer invloedrijke schrijversloopbaan kreeg eerder dit jaar in Amerika erkenning toen wetenschappers, beroemdheden en fans uit de hele wereld eer bewezen aan deze vooruitziende denker en zijn nieuwste werk, 3001.
Let me introduce live from Sri Lanka, Mr. Arthur C. Clarke.
Very nice. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, I'm delighted to have a chance of talking to you from Colombo.
We have a question now from Gary Lockwood, one of the stars of the film.
Hello, Arthur. Long time no see.
Lovely to hear from you, and you're glad to know, of course, I revived you in 3001.
Well, as I do in a lot of the movies I do, I died. Well, what happens in 2001 is the computer Hal is paranoid. I help make him paranoid. He kills me, my body flies off into space.
In 2001, you see Frank Poole spinning off into space to the far reaches of the universe, and that you think is the end of Frank Poole. But I realized, you know, that it might not be if he's deep frozen in 1,000 years' time and someone picks him up again and brings him back, he could be revived. I think this is quite possible.
It seems to me what is remarkable about 3001 is here we have an author who's approaching 80 years old, and he's just as ingenious, creative, and forward-looking as he was 30 years earlier.